In this lesson, we're going to discuss the world of ransomware. Now, ransomware is the digital equivalent of kidnapping, but instead of focusing on people, we're focused on digital data and information assets. Let's imagine for a moment that somebody came over to your house today. They grabbed your child when you weren't home, and then they sent you a letter demanding $1 million for your child's safe return. This type of kidnapping is usually pretty successful because the victim's family will usually pay up to ensure the safe return of their child. Now, with this in mind, let's go back to the digital world and talk about ransomware. Because ransomware is a type of malicious software that's designed to block access to a computer system or its data by encrypting it until a ransom is paid over to the attacker. Now, generally, ransomware will display a message to the victim that demands payment in exchange for a decryption key, which can decrypt your data files. Some ransom amounts can be fairly low, like a few $100s if the attacker determines they have encrypted the files of an individual user system. But we've also seen demands in the multi-millions of dollars for large organizations that have become the victim of a ransomware attack. To really understand the scale and scope of this type of ransomware problem, let's just take a look at a relatively recent, high-profile incident known as the Colonial Pipeline attack of 2021. Colonial Pipeline is a major U.S. fuel company that fell victim to a ransomware attack that forced them to shut down their pipeline. Now, that doesn't sound so bad on the surface, but the problem here is that the Colonial Pipeline actually carries nearly half of the United States' fuel supply on the East Coast. Now, due to this ransomware attack that took over their systems, the company was unable to use their pipeline for 5 straight days. This shutdown caused massive disruptions, which led to fuel shortages, panic buying, and a pretty large spike in gas prices. The attackers, known as the Dark Side, demanded and then received a ransom of approximately $4.4 million in Bitcoin to provide the decryption key for this attack. While the payment facilitated the recovery of some of the encrypted data, the attackers' repercussions really felt across industries and households for weeks. Luckily, during the Colonial Pipeline ransom attack, nobody was seriously injured, but that isn't always the case. One of the most tragic real-world examples of a ransomware attack actually occurred at the University Hospital in Dusseldorf, Germany, back in September of 2020. Back then, the University Hospital Dusseldorf suffered a ransomware attack which crippled their systems. Because of the attack, the hospital's computer systems were disrupted, and they began to divert patients who required emergency treatment to other hospitals while the cybersecurity team was working to regain access to their systems and to restore their data. Now, among those patients who were being diverted was a woman who was suffering from a life-threatening condition. Due to the delay caused by rerouting her ambulance to another hospital because of that ransomware attack, this woman actually died, making this the first death directly linked to a ransomware attack in a hospital. Now, German authorities launched an investigation, and if the attackers were caught, they could have faced charges of manslaughter in addition to cybercrime charges because somebody died as a result of the attack. The attackers claimed they did not intend to target the university's hospital system, but instead they were targeting the Heinrich Heine University, but they attacked the hospital by mistake. When they learned about the mistake and the severe consequences of their actions, they provided the decryption key to the hospital without demanding a future ransom. This ransomware attack really does underscore just how vulnerable critical infrastructure can be to a ransomware attack and the cascading consequences that these ransomware attacks can have on our society at large. So, now that we understand the gravity of ransomware, how can we protect ourselves and our organizations against it? Personally, I recommend following 4 security best practices to prevent becoming the victim of a ransomware attack. These are conducting regular backups, installing regular software updates, providing security awareness training to your end users, and implementing multi-factor authentication for your systems. First, you should always conduct regular backups. One of the most effective ways to mitigate against the impact of a ransomware attack is to regularly back up all of your important data, files, and systems. These backups should be stored both on physical devices in your own on-premise data center, as well as a second backup conducted using cloud-based storage solutions to ensure that they're not connected to the main system that you're trying to protect. For example, if you only have one external hard drive connected to your system that serves as your backup, this device will be encrypted by the ransomware if your system is attacked as well. But by having cloud-based storage or an off-site disconnected storage solution available, you're going to have a full copy of your data if you need to restore those from backup because of a ransomware attack. Second, you should install software updates regularly. By regularly updating all of your software, especially your operating system and antivirus programs, you can prevent an attacker from being able to exploit vulnerabilities in outdated software and operating systems. For example, the WannaCry ransomware attacks of 2017 were able to successfully move around the globe pretty quickly because so many systems were missing a critical operating system patch for Windows 7, Windows 8, and Windows 10 based systems, which is known as MS17-010. If the system simply had this patch installed, it would have prevented the Eternal Blue exploit from being successfully run against those systems as part of a future ransomware attack. Third, we need to provide security awareness training to our end users. Now, many of the most successful ransomware attacks were begun by an end user clicking on a link in a simple phishing email. Your users must always be skeptical of unsolicited emails, especially with those that have attachments or links in them, because they're often used as a common attack vector by malware, viruses, trojans, and ransomware. Bottom line, if something looks suspicious, your end users simply shouldn't click on it. Fourth, your organization should also implement multi-factor authentication. Now, multi-factor authentication, known as MFA, can be enabled on your authentication systems to provide an extra layer of security, which in turn makes it more difficult for attackers to breach your user accounts and install ransomware on your systems. So, what do you do if you find yourself the victim of a ransomware attack? Well, first, you should never pay the ransom. While it may seem like the quickest way to get out of the situation, paying the ransom does not actually guarantee that you'll ever get your data back. Plus, paying the ransom does reward the attackers and their criminal behavior, it funds future attacks, and it can get you added as a person who pays up when they're attacked, which then encourages other attackers to try and compromise your systems a second time in order to get a second payment from you. Second, if you suspect ransomware has infected your machine, you should immediately disconnect it from the network. By isolating the affected machine from your network, you can prevent the spread of ransomware across the rest of your workstations and servers. Third, you should notify the authorities. Remember, a ransomware attack is considered a criminal event, and they should be reported like the crime they are. Now, reporting a ransomware attack can help authorities track down and apprehend the attackers too, which is great. But note, you should not make the decision to report the attack to the authorities on your own. If this happened inside your organization, you need to consult your organizational incident response processes, because some organizations prefer to handle ransomware incidents internally without involving external law enforcement. And fourth, you should restore your data and systems from known good backups. If you're following the cybersecurity best practices and have been backing up your data to an offsite or offline environment, you're going to find that you can quickly and relatively easily restore your business operations using those backups. But you first need to ensure that the ransomware is completely removed from your systems before you restore your critical and sensitive data back onto those systems, otherwise they could get encrypted again. So remember, ransomware is a type of malicious software that's designed to block access to a computer system or its data by encrypting it until the ransom is paid to the attacker. You can prevent the worst effects of ransomware by conducting regular backups, installing regular software updates, providing security awareness training to your end users, and implementing multi-factor authentication in your IT systems. If you do fall victim of a ransomware attack, remember to never pay the ransom, disconnect the infected system from the network, notify the authorities if that's in alignment with your organization's incident response policies, and restore your data from known good backups to get your business operations restored back to normal as quickly as possible.